Everybody making a lot of videos this week, making up for the whole Cholamoyed that we were away. Only having little Cholamoyed shows. We didn't even show all of our Cholamoyed trips. We just did our thing. But the dinosaur footprints, I guess, was the one thing we showed. I don't know if I even made any videos of the reptiles that we went to, and I know we didn't do anything at the. Oh, and we made videos in Holy Land, USA, at the ruins there in Waterbury. Interesting little trip there. Anyway, but yesterday I made 3 videos, so Baruch Hashem, and they were videos with your Shemayim and Baruch Hashem nice and so it's a very nice thing. But anyway, let's get focused. Yesterday I went to dinner with my wife, which is something we don't often do. I don't remember the last time we did, but it was important. And at one point, everybody knows, if you watch the channel, we do the podcast with Rabbi Kivlevich, and we do the podcast. And I told him earlier that we're not doing the podcast. We usually record Tuesday night. So we're not doing the podcast. I didn't explain anything, and then when I told him, it was a whole back and forth. Anyway, we didn't have much time to discuss the whole question of doing the podcast, not doing the podcast. Well, could we do it Wednesday? Could we wait till next week? We decided we'll wait till next week. No big loss, right? But anyway, while we were out for dinner, the rabbi called me, Rosh Shiva, Rosh Medrash. He called me. And we spoke for a little bit and whatever it was, and I felt embarrassed because here I'm supposed to be out to dinner with my wife, and why am I talking on the phone? And I felt very self-conscious about it. I felt very uncomfortable with it. And then other times my wife had to answer telephone calls too while we were to dinner. While we're on the way back, I didn't feel any problem with that. I had no issue with her talking on the phone. I had an issue with me talking on the phone, right? Which is the way it should be. That's proper. That's good. I'm not trying to be arrogant and tooting my own horn, but I'm saying that's the way it should be. We should have self-reflection, not look at other people. We should look at ourselves. And I do enough looking bad at other people, and I've got to stop doing that. I said some lashon hara. I remember, I don't know if it was Erev Yontif or Cholamoyed, and I feel so bad about it. I just still feel like a lot of, and it was unnecessary lashon hara, and there was no tachlis in it, and it was very arrogant to me, and I'm struggling with that, and I'm trying to do tshuva for that. Barabim, and I feel really bad about it. But anyway, I'm bringing this up because I'm thinking of something else. Of when is there a good time to have that self-reflection, when there's not? Because it seems like zwischen uns Yidden, I'm talking about frum Jews, we tend to make self-reflections on Yiddishkeit that we should not be making. And apologizing in an unnecessary manner. Meaning this, I was talking to someone on the phone while I was supposed to be spending time with my wife that I should apologize for. But I don't expect my wife to apologize for her talking, and I think maybe she felt the same way too. That she was like, why, she probably maybe was self-conscious about herself being on the phone, but I didn't mind. I was able to bench, I was able to daven marev, I was able to chveis, do all kind, because I wasn't going to leave her in the car while I go to shul daven marev. I daven there in the restaurant while we're eating. We're waiting for the food to be served. which again I was a little bit self-conscious. So I'll daven a little faster because I'm here for tachlis, here for a purpose. But I have to daven. The same thing this morning. I had to daven quickly because I have something to do today, and sometimes I can daven at work. And this morning I don't have time for that. And that reminds me I have to go inside to do something there. That's a good thing now. I reminded myself. I knew I wouldn't have time to daven at work, which is okay because I can do other things while I'm davening. So I'm not I have things I'm doing. But anyway, with all that being said, I was thinking today, because I'm heading to an interfaith meeting that I go to every month, except in the summer they don't do it. And it's funny, the meeting I think was supposed to be last week on Yontif. Can you imagine? Last week was Yontif. It's hard to believe. Just like it's hard to believe it's been 22 years since we lost Rebbe Victor Miller. 17 years since we lost Satmar Rebbe Berch Moshe. And I part of the thing is, I made the Birkas Ilanos on the yard site day when I was Monday when I was by the Berch Moshe for the yard site when I was in Kiryas Yol, and I felt like I kind of messed it up because I don't know, I did, after I said the brach, I saw the tree that was on the list for Misaskim. I'm sure the other trees were also fruit trees. I was a little bit discombobulated, especially driving around in Kiryas Yol. My wife always says, there should be, video games of driving in from neighborhoods. The difference between Borough Park is probably one of the more interesting ones. And Muncie also, Borough Park and Muncie probably the ones where, because there are more people driving. In Flatbush, certainly more people driving. Whereas you go to Williamsburg and Kiryas Yol, more than half the people don't drive, and New Square, but still the driving is very difficult. Queens is always nice, although you don't know where you're going. Kew Gardens Hills. They say the difference in Borough Park and Kew Gardens Hills, because they said Borough Park, the streets were numbered by a smart person for stupid people, and Kew Gardens Hills, they numbered the streets by a stupid person, numbered the streets for smart people. I'm sorry to use the word stupid. It's not a nice, but it's part of the joke, but it's true, because you go to Kew Gardens Hills and you have like 72nd Road, 72nd Boulevard, 77th Avenue, 72nd Street. But I digress. Whereas Borough Park, it's this way it's a street, this way it's an avenue, corner 46th and 13th, you know exactly where you are. You don't have to second guess. So you go to Williamsburg and it's all the numbers from the people who signed the Declaration of Independence, right? So anyway, we and Kiryas Yol and New Square as presidents, right? Although Kiryas Yol, they also have Yiddish names. So anyway, with all the names from different towns in Europe and in Eretz Yisrael and other places. Anyway, I was imagining in my mind this morning, and this is kind of related to how I started, about apologizing, and there I was right, to apologize to my wife, and I realized that when she was on the phone, I didn't feel slighted by that on the way home. I didn't feel anything, but I was remembering how I felt self-conscious, and that's good. That's a good way for relationships to go. It's a key that I could give advice to anybody. Look at yourself first before you and the same thing is in general. It's another piece of advice that I can give is before you criticize someone else, see in yourself you have this. This is related to Parshas Tazria metzora, because the Mishnah in Negoim says, "Kol Negoim Adam Roya Chutz Meit Nigei Atzmai." So there's two sides to that. So of course there's three sides, of course, because there's a halachic side. But I'm saying two homiletical sides, two drush sides. So the halacha is when Kohen, when someone has tzaras, when someone has what I guess we could call biblical leprosy, he has the Kohen, the priest, has to declare it to be unclean. Right? That's what the Torah says. That's what the Bible says. And so what sometimes you would have a Kohen who is an ignoramus, and you'd have a rabbi who I guess would be a lay person. It's always interesting. You see dead porcupines. I almost never see living ones except in zoos. Someone told me they were with Biala Rebbe once, and they saw a living porcupine, and they're what's a days? And then the Gemara, I guess the Bacher, the Hosbacher, is like, it's a porcupine. What's a days? I heard the Yiddish word for a porcupine. It's a cool word, a stechler. That's much more descriptive than porcupine. I don't know what a porcupine is. Sounds like some kind of a cross between a pig and a tree. But a stechler, that sounds like what it is. It's a stechler. It's something that stechs. It's something. It's a stabber. Anyway, so the Mishnah tells us that when a Kohen he can look at everybody else's leprosy and declare clean or unclean, but he cannot look at his own. That's the halacha. So of course, al derech musar, we could say, kol negoyim adam roya chutz me'atzmo v'negei atzmo. A person sees everybody else's faults, he doesn't see his own. But the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh is quoted as saying something a little deeper. Kol negoyim adam roya chutz. All of the deficiencies a person sees outside of himself, Nigei Atzmo, comes from his own deficiencies, his own. They're sourced in his own plagues, his own problems, his own. And in a way, that's what we call in psychology projection, right? That if you're annoyed by someone else, you have a problem with someone else, look at yourself. You have that problem. In some level, maybe not exactly the same way the other person has. Like the Baal Shem Tov, he said he saw someone once was Mechal Shabbos, and he said that must mean he knew he wasn't Mechal Shabbos, so it must mean that he insulted a Talmid Chacham who was a Bechin of Shabbos. Or they say the Rebbe Melech, the Rebbe Zisha, when they praved Golus, that the Rebbe Melech he would prav Tikkun Chatzos. And they didn't know who he was, and he would go and confess the sins of his host. He said, Melech is a zogatin. And the person heard this, and he repented from it. He did tshuva. But like I heard, from the Ulam Arav, Shlita, he should be well. And I heard from Tzvi Meir Zilberberg, Rabbi Weinberg told us over from Rabbi Zilberberg, Zilgesundsein, and other tzaddikim. This is nicht gewein kein Spiel. You have certain things you have to say in Yiddish. I know that's like kind of cliche type of thing. Certain things you can only say in Yiddish, and they're usually like secular type silly things. But this is nicht gewein kein Spiel, and that's I'm quoting it over. I'm giving it over. Meaning, the Rebbe Melech wasn't playing a game. He wasn't making a play. He saw the fact that he saw a problem in someone else. He knew that there was something on his very exalted and saintly level, that there was some deficiency in himself that he actually had to repent for. Otherwise, God would not have allowed him to see that. He wouldn't have had the tools to see a deficiency in someone else if he didn't have that deficiency on his level. And so always before we criticize someone else, we should look at ourselves first. If we see some problem in someone else, Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, this is a real Hasidic teaching, look at yourself first. you have that problem on some level. Might not be the exact same thing, but again, you might need a certain amount of discernment and wisdom to understand what is the problem within you that is similar to this problem that's outside of you. Certainly when we're dealing with other pious people, we all have problems. Maybe we could say, all right, there's a big difference. We're talking about people who are far away from anything good in the world. But the truth is, everybody has something good in them. Even the biggest Russia, even the most wicked person has something good. That's what Rabbi Nachman teaches, right? As Amar V'Lakai B'Oidi, we were talking about that, I think, yesterday, right? You find that little bit of good in other people, you find it in yourself too. You have to. That's the other Hasidic teaching of this, is that you also have to look for the positive things. It's one thing you look for the negative traits and you want to fix them, but let's also look for the positive traits and focus on them. Like Reverend Victor Miller told me about it was in public, it was on the tape, and I posted the tape, but look how white the teeth are, even of the novella. The same thing. We're seeing a lot of horrible things in the world today, but let's try to look at the positive things in the horrible things, in people who are doing horrible things. Maybe and again, it's not the good things and the horrible things, but it's the good things and the people who are doing the horrible things. I know that a lot of people mean well, but they're doing horrible things, and we got to fix that. We got to stop it. But that's not canceling the person. That's not saying that person is evil. It's not saying that person, is irredeemable. What we're saying is this thing that this person, hate the sin but love the sinner, which could be sourced in Psalm 104. So anyway, let's try to look for good things, even in the people that we're fighting against, With all that being said, this whole schmooze right now was based on an idea I had this morning. I was reflecting on, describing, and I'm probably not going to do that, but describing Birkas Ilonos to this interfaith gathering, which they might like because it has to do with the environment and nature and stuff. But the specific aspects of it, right? Meaning, like Rabbi Soloveitchik from Yeshiva University, he once wrote up, can you imagine if Jews had Christmas trees? All the halachas. I know Modi told that joke, but this is Rav Soloveitchik wrote the joke long before. I don't know if Modi ever saw what Rav Soloveitchik saw, Buch Kavanti type of thing. Certain things that have his scholars in the world, and other people can be teufus them. But in any way, so like if I was thinking to myself, if I would be describing, and the reason I was thinking like this was, because this is a way a lot of frum people think. Like, we're always like apologizing for things that we imagine that the world would see as absurd in our religion. And we don't really need to do that. We don't really need to do that, Like, at work, some people, they pick on me because the hat I wear and this and that, and it's all in good natured. It's all in fun. It's all because, we work in a stressful environment, we work in corrections, and we have to, we have to let off steam, and I recognize that, and I embrace that, and but the thing was like, I don't know. What happened? So the thing is like this one guy is always picking on me, but he's friends with a Mormon bishop, and his wife is from the Jehovah's Witnesses. So, they're also, a little different than regular Protestants and Catholics. And it's all in good nature. It's not anti-Semitic. That this guy's picking on me. No, that's just the way that people. And the thing was like I always thought like this guy doesn't like me, and then the deacon at work was like, oh, so and so really likes you. I was like, he does. He's like, and he hates so and so, but he likes you. He's like, he knows you have a good sense of humor. And I was like, really? I was like, oh, okay, all right. Because because you got to roll with the punches, so to speak. I mean, that's something my mother always told me growing up. Guys rib on each other, and you got to know how to develop the way to do that. To be able to have that. What our friends from Mystery Science Theater call good nature ribbing. And I think I mentioned one day it was so funny to me, like this guy who I'm always have nice conversations with. He called another unit that I was making rounds, and he wanted to talk to the sergeant, and then they handed the phone to me, and they handed the phone to everybody else before it got to the sergeant, and I just thought that was the funniest thing. I was like, it's like, Josh, you're like, it's like, and I was like, that is hilarious. That is the funniest. That's good-natured ribbing. That's the way, we keep, that's a good, healthy way to let off stress in a healthy way that's not mean and that's not inappropriate, because that's a big problem. The way a lot of people deal with stress is with very inappropriate things. And this is the right way to do it, right? And you have to have certain calculations in how you do things and so forth. But I think so often, I'm talking about Orthodox Jews, we are always apologizing for our religion. Like, oh, it's so weird that, we, wear tefillin and put on the lulav and esrog and shake the lulav and esrog and all these things. And on one hand, we make fun of ourselves and have a good sense of humor. That's one thing, but then it's something else. But like this apologizing, and I think a lot of it has to do with because we look at the rest of the world as being so utterly secular. I remember in yeshiva, this might have been in high school, saying something like about my father was Catholic, and I was like, and he goes to church almost every week, and then when the one rabbi was like, well, that's all they have to do, right? They don't have to do more than that. Well, it's there are the churches have daily mass, just like we have a daily minyan. I mean, I remember I think it was Aldamato. No, it was from Queens, such a gentleman. Well, what was his name? It was an assemblyman from Queens, and he was being interviewed by Leon Charney. I'm trying to remember the name of it. Wonderful. It was a name like D'Amato. Not Valero. It was something with a V. Wonderful person. He donated the Art School Shas to the library on Main Street. Because like I remember one of the guys, he's a doctor now, in high school saying, oh, you could just borrow from the library. You could borrow Art School Gemaras. You could borrow Art School Gemaras. And this Valero, wonderful person. He donated the Art School Shas, which is an expensive thing, and he dedicated it to the library at Main Street. I don't know if the library in Spring Valley has Art School Shas. I know they have a lot of secular Israeli books. But anyway, the point I'm bringing up here is I remember Leon Charney, saying that this Catholic politician, he goes to Mass every morning, just like a good Jew goes to Minyan every morning. We're not that different. That's the point I want to bring out. We don't have to be apologizing for our religion. And we don't have to think everybody else is so secular either. I watched a movie over Chol Hamoed with my kids, which my wife and I saw back when I was Rav in Richmond. They showed in the University of Richmond a movie called Arranged, and you can watch it free online on Tubi and a lot of these other. It's streaming for free, and it's a story of a Jewish girl, frum girl, and a Muslim girl, and their friendship. They're both teachers in the public school, and there's this not too nice secular Jewish woman who's the principal and who's picking on both of them for being so frum. And there's another word I would use. It's not very rabbinical of me, but it's appropriate. It has a cognate of a certain mitzvah. Not a cognate. It has a homophone of a certain mitzvah, certain Masechet in Shas. That's for a certain yontif, and it's in another language, in Polish and in Russian. Anyway, this woman was like picking on them, and like the Jewish girl had like a roita bindle, which is questionable, this and that, but whatever. She was trying to get the shidduch and the whole thing. And it's really a brilliant movie. And this woman, the principal, is picking on her, Jewish woman, is not frum, liberal Jewish woman, and she's like, you're better than that. Come on. And then, the evil eye and this and that. And then, so she was working with a Puerto Rican kid, and he was like, we have that in Santeria, and whatever, my aunt does stuff like that, so then like the non-frum woman is like, you see, this is the type of stuff we're trying not to teach the kids, and this is, and then the young frum girl, she said, why is everything that's traditional bad for you? Why is it any different than all the ladies who read their horoscopes or anything else? So so I was thinking to myself, about apologizing for Birkas Ilanos, and I have to explain, because like I was thinking, because my plan was, if I didn't make Birkas Ilanos some other place, because I was in Scranton on Friday, I was looking for Birkas Ilanos, couldn't find it, so then figured, and I have an Indian, I like, even though I don't go to mikveh every day, I like to go to mikveh before Birkas Ilanos, because I saw that by Rav Tzvi Meir Zilberberg, so it's like important to me. So I was like, in Scranton I could go to mikveh, or at least the same day, to go to mikveh. And all right, in Scranton I could go to the mikveh, and there was a whole thing Sunday. I was gonna, whatever it was, I didn't have time. I was in a rush and this and that. So in Scranton, I was like, I'll go to the mikveh. The mikveh's open all day in Scranton during daylight hours until a half hour before Shkia, the men's mikveh. And I could go, so that was my cheshbon, but I made it already. I don't know how well I made it. I'm second guessing myself. But I know I looked at the tree after I said the bracha, so it should be okay. These types of things. But anyway, like, I'm going to explain to him that I'm going to explain to all these people who are clergy of other religions. It has to specifically be a fruit tree, and then it's blooming, and it's in the month of Nisan, and all these things, and this and that. I was like, but why would I say that in an apologetic way? They all have their things. The Muslims have Ramadan, and the Russian Orthodox and Greek Orthodox Christians, the way they do Lent, it's very, that's why they, people think the Easter egg is some kind of pagan thing. Easter egg is because in the Orthodox Church, you're vegan for the whole Lent, and so Easter is the first time you can, or they call Pascha, which is of course Pesach. That's the cognate of it. Is when they when they can finally eat eggs because they're vegan for 40 days. Like I think I remember Rabbi Yalkut Zolkazunstein, when we were both Rabbanim in Richmond. I went to daven mincha there in his shul because we didn't have weekday minyan in our shul, and he was mentioning, I think was from the Aruch HaShulchan, of people trying to get away with trying to find some heter to eat fleishiks on the 9 days, and he's like, our neighbors, they could go 40 days without fleishiks. All right, so they eat a rodent that lives in the water, they'll call it a fish. I don't know. They also have their loopholes and stuff, which they don't do today, but they used to do. It used to be, the whole thing, the capybara in South America, since it lives in the water. Is that a fish or is that the mammal? So anyway, the whole thing I'm bringing up here is like this: we're not that different, and the same thing for the secular people. Are they apologizing for the seventh inning stretch, or for whatever they do at basketball games or football games, or when you're in the crowd and there's certain minhagim that they do? They're not apologizing. We don't need to apologize that we have halachas and that we have ways of doing things. We can reflect on it, we can think about it, we can compare it, and be proud that we're different, and know who we are, but know that other people are also human beings, and they also have their ways of doing things. We don't have to apologize. Personal things, if we sliding someone else out, we have to apologize for it. We never have to apologize for our religion if we're following it in the right way, the way we're supposed to do things. Just like the other religions, they don't have to apologize either. They tell the joke. Because I'm going to this interfaith meeting. So they tell a joke that there's an ecumenical conclave, right? And all of these different religions, they all gave up something. I'm not going to say what, it's an old joke. It was on the internet back in the 90s when I was a kid. When we looked up Jewish jokes on the internet, I don't know if people my age remember that type of stuff. But I would print it out, bring it to shul, and we'd laugh and whatever. Go to the library and print out the Parsha sheets and all kinds of stuff. And stuff to read over Shabbos. This is when I was a kid. That's what I used to do. So I had like a kvias. I go to the library and print out whatever I wanted. I still have those printouts in my house when I printed out in 1998, 1999, 2000. So I'm sure they're all verschimmeled, but they're in bags in my house. And Torah tots and all kinds of other stuff, and Torah.org and Torah from Dixie. And that was so. But we had the Jewish jokes. So the one that they said every religion, they gave up something like major to their religion that's like different than all the other religions, And then they said the punchline was, and then the Jews said, all right, we're going to give up the second Yikub Perkan. Yikub Perkan min Shemayo. All right. So it's like that's how it is. We might like make fun of ourselves and second guess and try to like think. Like there's a wonderful YouTube channel that was on a long time ago. I can't believe it, more than 10 years ago. how time flies. It's called verplank. So it's like no kosher meat, 8 la'asot. So this YouTube channel, it was a sitcom, like a Jewish sitcom in the vein of The Office, about 4 Bachrim Yigalite, 2 who were like, kind of modern Orthodox, one who's Hasidish, and one who was like an extreme literature Bal Tshuva. And the 4 of them, like 2 just normal guys, and like the 4 of them, like going to some place out in the country to try to start a new frum community, and their misadventures in doing that, and it's like the Bal Tshuva guy, he's like, I am only here to do one thing, to make a real Makom Torah, a Bible place, or that he's like he's like explaining, like, they were borrowing, they were at the mayor's house, and he was going to give them some wine, and it was kosher wine. He was like, oh yeah, it's mavushal, that's okay, because your ancestors were heathens who worshipped trees and frogs, and just a silly stuff. And just a really brilliant. And the funniest one was the short one, which was 10 minutes long, where he's on the phone with a shadchan and with a farmer who might have a paraduma. So check it out. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment. Have a good day, everybody. Take care. How do I turn this thing off? Come on.